Welcome back. I'm coming to you live on day 12 of what is already one of the most consequential military conflicts of the 21st century. I want to take you through everything that is happening right now, fact by fact, claim by claim, because in a war of this scale, disinformation spreads faster than missiles. So let's do what we always do here. Separate what we know, what we're told, and what simply does not hold up. 12 days ago, on February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes against Iran in an operation the Pentagon named Epic Fury. President Trump announced major combat operations against Iran, with massive joint U.S.-Israeli strikes targeting military and government sites, ABC News. On that same first day of strikes, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed, with Iranian state media confirming the news early on March 1st. Wikipedia. His son, Masjed-e Khamenei, was subsequently chosen as his successor. And that succession matters enormously to how this war unfolds politically inside Iran. Now, here's the first thing I want to fact check. Iran's government has insisted that the scale of civilian casualties is catastrophic. Tehran says U.S. and Israeli forces have bombed nearly 10,000 civilian sites, resulting in more than 1,300 civilian deaths since the war began. Al Jazeera. That is a staggering number, and Western officials have not disputed the death toll in its entirety, but they have disputed the characterization of what was struck. Israel claims it is targeting military infrastructure, regime sites, and weapons facilities. The United States says the same. But here is what independent reporting is showing us on the ground. U.S. and Israeli strikes have damaged at least 4 cultural and historical sites, including palaces and an ancient mosque, raising significant alarms about protected landmarks. NBC News. UNESCO has now verified damage to Golestan Palace in Tehran, the 17th century Chehel Sotoun Palace, and the Masjed-e Jāme, Iran's oldest Friday mosque. UNESCO provided the geographical coordinates of these sites to all parties before the conflict began. That is a documented fact. That damage happened. Whether it was intentional is disputed, but the damage is not. Now, let's talk about what may be the single most damaging headline of this entire conflict so far. On the very first day of strikes, March 1st, a girls' school in Minab in southern Iran was hit. The strike killed as many as 175 people, most of them students, according to Iranian officials. NPR Iran blamed the United States immediately. Israel denied any connection. President Trump initially blamed Tehran itself for the strike, suggesting in a remarkable claim that Iran had somehow bombed its own school. But here is what has emerged since then. A preliminary U.S. assessment suggests the United States was likely responsible for the deadly attack, but did not intentionally target the school, with dated intelligence possibly to blame, according to a person briefed on the preliminary intelligence. CBS News. So the U.S. military is now investigating how it fired a Tomahawk missile at a school. That investigation is ongoing, but the direction of the preliminary findings is clear. And the claim that Iran was responsible for its own school strike does not hold up to the evidence as it stands. Let's move to the Strait of Hormuz, because this is where the economic war is being fought alongside the military one. The strait, which Iran has effectively closed, is a crucial artery for the global economy, since about 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through it. CNN. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has now stated explicitly that any ship wishing to pass through the strait must obtain Iran's approval, or face attack. That is not a threat. That is a policy being enforced with live fire. At least a dozen vessels have been attacked since U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran set off this widening war. NPR. On Wednesday alone, a Thai-flagged bulk carrier called the Mayuri Nari was set ablaze in the strait. A Japanese-flagged container ship sustained damage. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Center, run by the British military, has been tracking all of this in real time. Now, President Trump made a statement this week that I need to flag for fact-checking. He wrote on Truth Social that he does not believe Iran has successfully laid any mines in the strait, even as he demanded their immediate removal. The U.S. military said Tuesday it destroyed 16 mine-laying vessels near the Strait of Hormuz, following a CNN report that Iran had begun laying mines in the waterway. NPR. So the U.S. military is destroying mine-laying ships, while the commander-in-chief says he doesn't think any mines were actually laid. Those two positions are in tension with each other. They may be reconcilable. Perhaps the ships were destroyed before mines were deployed. But the public messaging from the White House and the actions of the military are telling two slightly different stories. On the economic impact, let's look at what the data is actually telling us. Brent crude oil prices surged back above $100 a barrel this week. The International Energy Agency took an extraordinary step. The IEA agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil, the largest such action in the organization's history, to address the supply disruption triggered by the Iran war. CNBC, and yet prices kept climbing. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright acknowledged that American consumers will have to suffer through a short-term period of higher energy prices. ABC News. That is a notable admission from the administration. On the cost of the war itself, analysts estimated the cost to the U.S. at least $890 million per day, while the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated the first 100 hours cost $3.7 billion. Wikipedia. Those numbers are staggering, and they are being paid by the American taxpayer at a time of already elevated inflation. This morning's Consumer Price Index reading showed prices rising 2.4% year on year. But analysts warn that the oil shock from this conflict threatens to push that number significantly higher. I also want to address a claim circulating heavily on social media. There are posts asserting that Iran has suffered virtually no military losses and that the U.S.-Israeli campaign has failed. That is demonstrably false. U.S. officials said U.S. forces severely damaged Iran's naval capabilities, mainly in the Gulf of Oman, where several Iranian warships have reportedly been destroyed and key bases hit. Wikipedia. Iran's ballistic missile launch rate also declined in the first week, with analysts pointing to depletion of stockpiles. However, Iran has shifted tactics. Russia is giving Iran specific advice on drone tactics, helping Tehran hit U.S. and Gulf nation targets, a new level of support beyond the general targeting assistance previously reported. CNN. That is a Western intelligence assessment, and it represents a significant escalation in Russian involvement that demands scrutiny and ongoing verification. The humanitarian picture is being severely underreported. More than 750,000 people have been displaced in Lebanon alone in the 12 days since the conflict began, with the United Nations calling the pace of displacement unprecedented. NBC News. The World Health Organization has warned that toxic black rain, polluted rainfall caused by strikes on Iranian fuel depots, could pose serious health risks to civilian populations. Al Jazeera. This is not propaganda from either side. This is the WHO. And on the travel and economic disruption beyond oil, the conflict is costing the Middle East's travel and tourism sector at least $600 million per day in lost international visitor spending, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, with major hubs like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Bahrain having faced nearly 2 weeks of closures and operational chaos. CNN. Back in Washington, the political pressure on the Trump administration is building. Democratic senators are demanding public hearings on the war's goals and questioning the administration's strategy. Joe Rogan, who is a prominent Trump supporter, told listeners on his podcast that Trump's move against Iran seems so insane based on what he ran on, noting that many of the president's supporters feel betrayed given Trump's 2024 campaign promises of no more wars. NBC News. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has confirmed that 7 U.S. service members have been killed and 140 others wounded so far. CNN. Those are American lives, and the American public is only beginning to process what that means. Here's where we stand. This is a war that began 12 days ago, has already killed more than 1,300 people in Iran, over 600 in Lebanon, displaced nearly 1 million people, closed the world's most important oil shipping lane, and cost the United States alone upwards of $10 billion. President Trump has said the war will be over very soon, but has offered no timeline and no defined military objective that the public can evaluate. Just days before the strikes began, Oman's foreign minister said a breakthrough had been reached and peace was within reach following nuclear talks. Wikipedia. That diplomatic window closed. It is worth asking why. We will keep verifying. We will keep pushing back on spin from every direction. Stay with us.